Welcome to In the News with Double Des. I'm Des Bernardo, giving you my perspective on news from South Africa and the rest of the world. Today's article that I want to cover is again from News24, and the reason why I'll do many articles from News24 is because it's the largest online platform at the moment with almost 7 million viewers, and because of the lockdown, many people are reliant on the internet. And that is why the internet bandwidths were open up at the beginning of this lockdown so that people could be on the internet, because the government believed that this would, not just the government, the people advising them like the World Health Organization said that the people would actually be happy being at home as long as they have fast internet. The headline for this specific article, it gives a lot of infographics. It's infographics on COVID-19, and the headline reads, "The 7 hardest hit districts in SA and why lockdown can't be lifted yet." So this is now News24, who's supposed to bring news to the nation through independent journalists, just regurgitating what the government is telling them to do. This is not journalism, this is propaganda. But let me read. As government consultations continue over the possibility of lowering lockdown levels at the end of May, early analysis by the Department of Health has revealed the 7 hardest hit districts likely to remain at high risk stages. Well, that is speculation, of course. Ekurhuleni Metro in Gauteng, eThekwini Metro and Lembe District in KwaZulu-Natal, Buffalo City and Nelson Mandela Bay metros in the Eastern Cape, as well as the Cape Town City Metro and the Cape Winelands District in the Western Cape, have the highest number of COVID-19 infections in the country. Now, to understand what rubbish they're speaking here, is there's no such thing as a COVID-19 infection. COVID-19 is the disease caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Now, you can be infected by the SARS-CoV-2 virus and not even develop a disease or any symptoms at all. And this happens in 98% of cases. 20% of those people will develop mild symptoms. It is only a few that develop the disease that becomes life-threatening. So, for them to say COVID-19 infections, there's no such a thing as a COVID-19 infection. It's medically unsound, and the media using statements like that is misrepresenting science, and they are lying to the people. Now, the person that wrote this article, Kyle Cohen, should go back to school and learn how to comprehend things and understand how to actually write things accurately in the media. Then they said this is based on the average number of active cases between 2nd and 8th of May per district, which is then compared per 100,000 people of the population. The Garden Route Western Cape and Chris Hani Eastern Cape districts, as well as the city of Johannesburg, Gauteng province, follow closely behind to make up the top 10 hotspots around the country. Now, they've chosen words like hotspots to create fear in people's minds. You must understand, in winter time, when the flu season comes around, they don't speak about hotspots. Do they ever do articles to talk about the people that die because of the flu, or the people that die because of many other diseases that people die from? They don't do this. So this is absolutely just scaremongering, and him as a journalist should be questioning this, and he should be using his own mind in posting something. But remember, in my last video, I spoke about the government lockdown. The fact that these people can't be journalists at this stage, because when they speak their mind, they must account to government because of the disaster management regulations. If I continue, Health Minister Zweli Mkhize explained to News24 that districts were being grouped by the average number of active cases per 100,000 people over a set time period, and categorized in intervals of between 0, 0.5, 0.5 to 1, between 1 and 5, between 5 and 10, and above 10. This was shared in a slide given to News24 by Mkhize's office, which was used to build an infographic showing the levels per district. What is happening now is the government is trying to get buy-in from journalists to not do their job anymore. They're basically doing the job for the journalists instead of the journalists actually asking for the raw data and coming up with their own statistics, which would be proper journalistics. Then they show the infographics. The graphic shows that the city of Cape Town remains at the highest level by far, with average active cases topping 50 per 100,000 people between 2nd and 8th of May. Now, if you look at how long this SARS-CoV-2 virus has hit the South African shores, then this is extremely, extremely low, people. I believe this virus is by now everywhere. And just because the testing hasn't been done everywhere, we don't have a proper idea of how far it's spread. I've probably had it 2 or 3 times already, and has either had no symptoms or mild symptoms, because I've been through a few things already. And if you actually look at these numbers, there's no justification for what our government is currently doing, because our constitutional rights are being taken away. And in fact, there's no right that they have under our constitution to lock us down at home, not under a state of disaster. A state of emergency is a very, very different thing. But when our president goes to a state of emergency, then Mogoeng, our Chief Justice, comes into play, and he certainly doesn't want that, because Mogoeng is actually on our side. So if you look at the further graphics, they try and paint a picture throughout South Africa to convince people that what they're doing is correct and why the lockdown cannot be lifted. What we should be asking is, what right did they have to put us under a compulsory lockdown to begin with? And the answer is none. Not the president, not Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma or any other minister had the right to lock anyone down at home for any circumstance that is not a disaster. Currently, there are so few people affected. To call this a disaster at this stage and enact what they have enacted is absolute fearmongering. And some people might disagree with me, and that is fine if they disagree with me. When you treat any viral outbreak anywhere, you need to isolate immediately at the source. And the source to South Africa was the airports. We did not act immediately when we knew that people were traveling from all over the world to the country. We could have stopped this problem in its tracks then. Why was it not stopped? And that question has not been asked. The government is being lauded for all of their actions when we could have taken actions early on to stop this dead in its tracks. But the government did not do so. So the question we need to ask once again, what is going on? Who's running the ship? Is our president in charge? Are even the cabinet ministers or his top group of 6, are they in charge? And the answer is no. They are getting instructions. If you give them the credit to think that they can come up with this mess, with the capacity that they have, you're making a big mistake. This is a well-orchestrated effort from around the world to see how compliant we are. Acting like sheep, walking into a kraal and being stuck there until the gate is opened again. And the people need to wake up and realize that our constitution was written, as flawed as it is, so that we do have certain rights, and the constitutional court needs to be used. And the biggest problem right now is the fact that people are afraid to use the courts or go to court, and government relies on the fact that people will not make that effort at all for them to enact what they have enacted. And they have to use fear and the mainstream media to achieve your obedience. That takes me to another article that ties in with what I've just said, and that is lockdown. You have the right to sue government. I won't stop you, Cyril Ramaphosa. For the president to say that, he has to be absolutely psychotic. To say to the people that you can sue government, it is your right. He should not be doing anything as a president that's supposed to care for the people to want us to cause us to sue government for any reason. It says here, President Cyril Ramaphosa says every South African has the right to approach the courts, and even he as president could never stand in the way of anybody exercising that right. He knows this. This is why Chief Justice Mogoeng at the beginning of this lockdown said the courts will remain open, because the president and his little crony group actually wanted the court shut down. And Chief Justice Mogoeng said that will not happen. You see, this Chief Justice actually institutes Cyril Ramaphosa and swears him in as the president of the country. And the Constitutional Court is actually a higher body than the president himself. And as long as Mogoeng is there, it'll always be a thorn in the side of people that enact terrorist activities. By terrorizing the public with the police and with the military to enforce regulations that can never be upheld in a constitutional court. He said in his weekly newsletter on Monday that while we would prefer to avoid the need for any legal action against government, we should accept that citizens who are unhappy with whatever action that government has decided on implementing have a right to approach our courts for any form of relief they seek. This is a normal tenet of a constitutional democracy and a perfectly acceptable practice in a country founded in the rule of law. When I read that, I thought back of the military. When I did my basic service in the Air Force, we were basically treated like trash for 2 months. The interesting thing is, we actually did courses, and in the last week, when we did our last bit of the course, we studied military law, in which we could see how the law was broken continuously throughout that 2-month period. Now, I see this as very much the same. Coming towards the end of lockdown or scaling down lockdown, our president now tells us that, well, it's your right to sue the government. Why did he not say this right at the beginning? Why did President Cyril Ramaphosa not say, please, if you're not happy with our laws, take us to court. In fact, we will help you. No, we'll even make lawyers available to fight for your cause. This is what true democracy is, President Cyril Ramaphosa. Not this belated action because you now have court cases filing up against you. Ramaphosa cited a poll in 2018 by the Pew Research Center which showed that South Africans were strongly inclined to take political action about issues they feel most strongly about, such as healthcare, education, freedom of speech, and corruption. We don't have a president. We have a dictator. This is clear.